The SG Child Show is back for its 13th season. Join Sarah Bradford and the SG Child Show team as they explore the world of autism and share stories of hope and inspiration. This season, we're excited to bring you more autism summits featuring experts and advocates from around the world. Go to sgchilds.org.
In the heart of the city, she's shining bright. Oh yeah, stories of love and courage all throughout the night.
Hey everyone, I wanted to take a second to talk to you about the International Autism Summit coming up in April 25th and 26th. It's going to be streaming free from all of my channels. If you haven't already gone to follow me, go to sgchilds.org, click on any of the social media icons, and go follow me so that you can be with us at the International Autism Summit 2025, April 25th and 26th. Can't wait to see you then. Hi, I'm SG Childs. Join me in building a community of inclusion. I'm holding a silent auction where you can bid on unique items and experiences for autism awareness and our International Autism Summit 2025. Every bid helps support autistic individuals and families worldwide. Find out more at sjchilds.betterworld.org. Hi, and thanks for joining the SG Child Show today. We are going to be having a wonderful, engaging conversation today with Ethan Pompeo. And where are you from, Ethan? Where are you at today?
I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, Central Virginia.
Oh, beautiful. I've never been to Virginia, but I do have some friends and that post pictures all the time. And it's gorgeous when they are doing that. So, I'm so nice to have you here today. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. So it's a chilly, rainy day today. We had a little snow. Spring day, Utah spring. A tulip with a little snow on it. Darn it. I'm really excited to talk to you, and thank you for being flexible with our schedules and getting here. Before we start the discussion, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and kind of what brought you here.
Sure. Yeah. So as we were talking before we started the recording, I'm a dad. I've got 4 little daughters. My wife and I, we live here in like the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we have more or less a homestead lifestyle here. I did not grow up that way, but when I was 13 years old, I started experiencing neurological symptoms that really wrecked my life and my quality of life. I started having motor tics, like loss of motor function, compulsive behavior, OCD, ADHD, all these neurological symptoms that came out of nowhere. And it was a long, multi-decade journey to get to where I am here today and understanding the cause of all this and how to heal from it. So that's my message, and that's what brought me to your podcast.
Yeah, and I'm so glad. I love to share stories because I think that we really can learn so much from another person's living experiences, and of course others lived ones who have passed on, but those experiences of people we can relate to, and just kind of ideas and things that we can really draw from. I know in my journey, even just being a podcaster, I've learned so much. I learned from every single guest, and that is so much to take away. And I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, let's start at the beginning. Kind of tell us a little bit about because I have a 13-year-old, and heaven knows I was 13 at one time, and it can be a very disastrous and like very grueling place to be in your life. And tell us a little bit about kind of that onset and what started happening, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, 13 is a tough age for everybody, right? We're
I think
becoming an
so.
adult in many senses. We're trying to figure out who we are and form our own path in life. And to be hit with a chronic disease like that in the midst of everything else that's going on in life, it was traumatic. It was a lot to deal with. And then on top of that, add the fact that we had no idea that was what was happening or what was causing this for almost 10 years. It was a challenge. It was rough, an isolating, dark place for much of that time. And um, turns out I was dealing with something called PANDAS. It's an acronym for, it's not the cute, cuddly bamboo munching bear that we all are familiar
Mm.
with. It actually is a disease called Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorders associated with Strep. And basically, what that means is a strep throat infection or sometimes other infection causes an unusual autoimmune response in the body, namely excess production of strep antibodies. Now, antibodies are our frontline defense mechanism against foreign pathogens and invaders. Ideally, they're good, right? But when your body produces them in excess in response to this chronic recurring infection, you can start to get problems. And my problems occurred when those antibodies crossed the blood-brain barrier and entered my basal ganglia, which is the motor cortex of the body. And so I was, in essence, overnight, I went from being a healthy, otherwise normal teen to being plagued with these autoimmune and neurological symptoms like the motor tics and loss of motor function, chronic anxiety, all these other symptoms that were not normal.
Mm.
And it was a hard pill for me to swallow to realize, hey, something is not right. Something is wrong here. My body's not acting the way it should be. And I dealt with those symptoms in numerous respects. First of all, the physical manifestation of the tics was incredibly frustrating. I'd have to pick up my phone or my pencil, then put it down and pick it up and put it down over and over again until it felt just right. And sometimes this would go on for hours until I was so frustrated that the device would end up sailing across the room into the wall of my bedroom. And let's just say I got very good at repairing drywall over the years from all the damage that I caused. So emotionally, I had this anger and this intense anxiety and rage and frustration based around the symptoms I was dealing with. And it impacted every aspect of my life. The immediate onset of PANDAS is very difficult too, because quite literally you wake up one morning and you have these symptoms and these tics, and they only worsened over time as we struggled to find answers, and the infection and the inflammation in my brain continued to fester and get worse as a result of not finding the correct treatment.
It's just an incredible story, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing this story, because for everyone out there and anyone that needs, this information or might have already experienced this, may go through this in the future, and now you'll know, what to maybe look for, and we'll get more into that. But what a scary situation to have to go through, especially like we both had said, just going through teenageism, as a typical and neurotypical teenager without some type of, immune attack, then, that's hard enough. But I can't
Right.
imagine like how frustrating that might have been, and how confusing, and and how hard it must have been on your family your parents to not have the answers or know where to find them. So hard. Where did they start? Like, what kind of misdiagnoses, if any, did you get, and how did that look? Because I think that's really important to shine a light on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this was just about 20 years ago. This year will be the 20th anniversary of the onset of my symptoms.
Wow.
And I've come a long way, clearly. Like, I'm sitting here now, you wouldn't know that I had these issues. They still impact my life, but in a very minute sense compared to, the way they used to plague my life. I've learned many ways to cope and overcome with this, and we'll talk about that as well. But in the early days, like, we didn't know what was going on. I remember I started having this fit of tics in the bathroom as I prepared for bedtime. I was brushing my teeth and something was wrong, and I kept just banging the toothbrush on the countertop over and over again, and I couldn't get myself to stop. There was toothpaste spraying on the mirror, and I started to exhibit like the classic Tourette syndrome response of cursing and swearing and raging around. And my dad came in the bathroom and said, "Ethan, like, dude, what's going on? This is not like you. Like, something is clearly wrong. We need to address this." And so we scheduled an appointment with my pediatrician, and he referred us to a neurologist because this was outside of his area of expertise. And so we actually traveled out of state to visit this neurologist. And I remember in the car thinking, oh, this neurology guy is going to tell me what's wrong, get me on the right path, and everything will be good. That is not what happened. I was told I had Tourette syndrome, which really didn't give us any answers. We didn't know what caused it. We didn't know how to treat it. We didn't know the cure or anything. So in effect, the diagnosis of Tourette syndrome was more or less a label that I was given to prescribe me drugs. And so that's exactly what happened. Within 10 minutes or less, we were in and out of his office, and I walked away with a prescription for this blood pressure medication that had been shown to sometimes reduce tremors and tics. And so began my journey as I refer to, I was like a lab rat.
A guinea
Right.
pig. Yeah, right? Exactly. The pill guinea pig. Exactly. I went through that.
Oh, it's not
different
fun.
route. Yeah.
I mean, by the time I was 17, I was on and off more than 40 different prescription meds. None of them helped. Like, the side effects outweighed the benefits of all these meds, and I ended up feeling worse by taking many of them.
I can't imagine. Well, I mean, I kind of didn't have that experience, but had a lot of like misdiagnosed or for probably female autism. Now I know, but back then, it was like, oh, you're bipolar. Here, let's put you on this. Let's put you on this birth control, this birth control, this birth control, this birth control. And I wasn't doing anything that I needed that for. They were just trying to control moods and other things like that. And it was just like this massive overload of nasty medicines, and it's just crazy.
I can't imagine the hormone imbalance that treatment would cause it, right? I mean, the side effects of these things, that I feel like the physicians often don't even consider the adverse effects that could come with trying these medications,
It's crazy. Oh man. Let's talk about the kind of how you did overcome some of these challenges while you were going through it, kind of how you managed them, things like that. And then we'll talk about how we finally got to the end of that in a little bit.
Yeah, so I've always been a go-getter. And so while I was there was a period of time where I succumbed to this illness, and I felt very alone and isolated, and like no one could help me. We went to dozens and dozens of doctors and tried this and that, and if the pill didn't work, try more and this and that, and it was really getting me nowhere. And I remember getting in trouble in 10th grade math class. The teacher called my parents and said, "Look, I think Ethan's on drugs. He's fallen asleep at his desk." And I told my parents, like, "Look, I am on drugs. Like, these medications are terrible." And I think it was that use model of substance reliance and substance use that led me into an ideology that this was the way to treat things. And honestly, in my opinion, the pharmaceutical experience that I had was the gateway drug to moving into illicit substances. And so being a young teenager, I was seeking out anything that could give me relief. And during high school, I tried cannabis. And I remember the first time I smoked, I immediately felt like this sense of relief and calmness. And I never go on anybody's show to condone cannabis use because I don't think that is a good solution for most people, especially kids and teenagers. But nevertheless, that was the only thing I found. That was like my only tool that I had at the time to help me
Yeah.
feel better and give me some relief. So I relied on that for many years. And like I come from a conservative family. Like my parents busted me I don't know how many times for smoking, and it was not a fun place to be. I remember one time I came home from cross country practice, and my dad, he probably smelled it on me and said, Ethan, have you been smoking? And I said, why are you asking me this, Dad? And he said, well, you're just so calm. You're like relaxed. You're not having any tics. And I'm like, Dad, like, yeah, you just answered your own question. Like, do you see why I'm doing this? And so the light bulb kind of went off in his mind, like, oh man, he's not just trying to party. Like, this is actually something he's using, trying to use medicinally. The problem is I didn't know why it was helping me. And this was before we got the PANDAS diagnosis, right? I still really didn't even know what was wrong with me. I just knew that when I used this substance, it helped me. And after going on and off all these meds, it was like, this is the answer.
Yeah.
So I went through that lifestyle for many years, experienced all the negative consequences of that, including trouble with the law. Um, I had paranoia and anxiety associated with my use. The consistency of the material and the medicine that I was getting was lackluster. Sometimes it would
Mhm.
help me, and other times it would make me feel more anxious. Other times it would put me to sleep. And then the people I was hanging out with as a result of that lifestyle was not great either. So I really needed a reset. And it was actually after college. I went through a 5-year undergraduate program and actually got my degree. And um,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it was still to this day is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did do it. The day after college, I moved to Colorado. I got a job on the
Mm.
oldest organic farm in the state, and I just started growing watermelons and carrots and everything except cannabis. Basically, we grew. Uh, but I moved out there really pragmatically because I didn't want to get in trouble anymore. I just wanted
Yeah.
to do what I knew would help me and live a carefree lifestyle. I still had responsibilities on the farm, but it was nothing like what I was used to with assignments being due and everything like that. I was working outside, I was breathing fresh air, drinking clean water, eating fresh farm produce. I was doing physical labor every day. There was very little stress or anxiety or pressure on me, and I just fell in love with that lifestyle. And it was actually there in Colorado that I was introduced to CBD, which is one of many active components of cannabis that I call nature's most powerful anti-inflammatory.
Mm.
And knowing what I know now about pandas and how the strep infection causes this brain inflammation, the pieces of the puzzle started to come together in my mind, and I realized what was actually helping me was not being high, it was not getting the THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis. It was actually the CBD in this plant that was relieving the inflammation in my basal ganglia, relieving my symptoms and helping me to feel better. It was actually addressing the root of the cause instead of just masking my symptoms.
Mm.
So, in addition to that, I realized that CBD could be taken orally or applied topically. So I didn't have to smoke, right? I didn't have to deal with the psychoactive. I didn't have to be intoxicated any longer. I didn't have to carry around an illegal substance. So it was like an answered prayer for me because I got that relief I needed without any of the negatives. And so that was kind of like the catalyst to my lifestyle change.
Mm.
I'm sure when you deal with any kind of chronic illness, a neurological illness, it's very difficult to make changes when you're stuck in those symptoms.
Yeah.
And dealing with motor tics, I'm physically stuck in these symptoms. I'd come home from school just trying to push everything to the side and ignore my symptoms. And the last thing I wanted to do is like talk about this with my family or go see a doctor. I had physician fatigue. I was sick of doctors and pills and
Yeah.
pharmacies and all this stuff. I just wanted to ignore it. And so I really didn't make any progress um, from that whole time from high school to college. And so it wasn't until I found something that helped me without the side effects, without the health risks, that I was able to take a step back and take a deep breath and refocus and think, okay, like what are areas of my life that need to change? And after working on the farm and experiencing that lifestyle, I learned a lot about myself and the things that helped me.
I love that. And I do appreciate what you said about not condoning smoking, but this is your story and your experience. And so I really appreciate you sharing it with us. And I think those that are interested and are curious, which you all should be, this is the type of information that you can look into to see if it will work for you and if it's good for the things you might be going through. I think that it's wonderful to have more resources than less resources available to you. Let's talk about what the PANDAS diagnosis looks like and a little bit more kind of information about that for our listeners so that they can kind of grasp their mind around that.
Yeah, so PANDAS diagnosis is a clinical diagnosis. There's no quantitative blood test or anything you can take that says you have this, right? It kind of, like many neurological disorders, it involves putting together the pieces, looking at your medical history, your history of infection in the past, taking blood work, looking at your symptoms and analyzing all this and putting the pieces together and determining that the cause and effect relationship. And that's how PANDAS is diagnosed. And like 20 years ago, when I first started having my symptoms, no one had even heard of PANDAS. I mean, it was not on the doctor's radar at all. So it was very, very difficult. A lot has changed since then, and I work with several organizations to promote awareness and advocate for PANDAS so that it's easier to diagnose and treat. And I'm very encouraged by that. I was just on a call with a PANDAS advocacy group earlier this week, and that's exactly what they said. Like today, people don't have to go a decade without knowing what's going on. Like oftentimes you can go to one, two, maybe three doctor's appointments before you find someone who is experienced and knowledgeable in this enough to identify it and get you on a treatment protocol. And that is the key to making progress in this, because like I said, when you're misdiagnosed, you don't even know where to begin. You have to know like what is causing these issues in order to address it. And so with PANDAS, the typical treatment protocol is a two-pronged approach. One, you have to address the source of infection. So in my case, it was a strep throat infection. So getting rid of that, nipping the strep throat bacteria in the bud, getting rid of it is paramount, because you don't really have a fighting chance if your body is still fighting off that pathogen that's causing all the problems. So the first, there's many ways to deal with this, and physicians have different opinions on it, but typically long course antibiotics is the protocol, 60, 90 day therapy, even longer, in order to get rid of every trace of that bacteria in your system so that you can start fresh. And the second prong to this approach is to address the source of inflammation. So now that you've gotten rid of the strep bacteria, you want to address that inflammation in the brain that's causing all these symptoms. PANDAS is also known as autoimmune encephalitis, so brain inflammation caused by the immune system. So when you're fighting that strep bacteria, your body is continuing to produce the antibodies that are causing the inflammation. So first off, getting rid of that infection and then addressing the inflammation is your pathway to healing. And there's lots of different ways to do that.
Yeah, and I think that finding what solutions work best if you are in this situation is best for you, whether that looks like, tell us about some other solutions. And I love that the CBD works best for you. What have other support groups or other advocates that you've met along the way? What are some of their advice that they might give, or you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. There's other treatment options available, but the jury's still out. There just is not enough research on this. And that's why, actually in 2 weeks, we have our annual 5K fundraiser with the Alex Manfill Foundation, who Susan Manfill is like an incredible advocate for PANDAS in this community. Her daughter had PANDAS as well. And we have this dinner in Washington, D.C., followed by a 5K fundraiser, and we've done so much work in advocating for this and making progress in educating physicians. And so again, we know a lot more about this now than we did previously, but there are blood transfusions that have worked really incredibly for some people and then not really worked at all for others. I never actually went through that treatment because at that point I was just done. I was done with all the conventional medicine, and the last thing I wanted to do is sit in a hospital bed for 3 hours, with an
Needles.
invasive procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that wasn't for me. But what I have found is just focusing on an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, and that's with regards to exercise, diet, and supplementation mainly. And many of these things are, we should all be doing them, quite honestly. Like, I was living a very sedentary lifestyle. I was eating the food from the dining halls. I was snacking all the time. I was probably eating too much sugar, probably drinking too much alcohol, all these things that were just making the problem worse. And so, I don't recommend any specific diet or anything because we're all different. But what I can recommend is eliminating processed foods, eliminating sugar and alcohol and empty carbs that cause inflammation, focusing on an anti-inflammatory diet. I believe the food we eat is our primary medicine, so you can't just eat junk and inflammatory foods and then wash it down with a pill and expect your problems to go away. That's
100%.
That's just not how it works.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. I mean, that is the truth. That's a hard pill to swallow for people, but that is the dang truth right there. You can't just expect a medicine to change your lifestyle. Like, you've got to make the steps on your own. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to have enough self-love to do it for, do it for yourself. Number one. That's it. Right. So,
and modern medicine has its purpose. My experience was not great, but for example, when you have a strep throat infection, like, antibiotics can absolutely help, right? Yeah. So I did rely on certain medications for my healing, but today I take 0 pills. I don't take any medication. Like, I don't smoke. I'm completely off all that stuff because of the changes I've made in my life. And so number one is diet, just analyzing your diet and what you eat throughout the day. Intermittent fasting can be helpful. There's lots of tools that you can use that cost you nothing, basically, that we should all be utilizing. And kind of a parallel to that, exercise, like getting off the couch and getting in an exercise routine is so critical. And for me in particular, weightlifting and strength training has been integral to my healing journey. And not just because, like, I'm exerting energy at the gym, I look better, I feel better, right? I'm stronger. All those things are more or less side effects of weightlifting. But my functional medicine doctor has actually gone back and examined my journey, and he has said that muscle mass acts as a sink for eosinophils, like inflammatory compounds, cytokines, antibodies, these compounds that are causing the inflammation in my brain. At the time when I was struggling the most, I was very underweight. I was like skin and bones. I was running I was running in high school, but not really doing much exercise in college. And the antibodies had nowhere to go. So that's why they kind of entered an area where they didn't belong, which was my brain. By gaining almost 60 pounds of muscle mass over this past few years from working out and exercising, I've built all that muscle mass, which acts, it basically gives the antibodies a place to go. So not only has that muscle mass diluted the effects on my body, of the antibodies on my body because there's more of me, but it actually has given them a place to go other than into my brain. So that's been very helpful, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, without sounding uneducated, and which I am about this, so I guess it's okay. Is it curable? Is that even like politically okay to say? I didn't want to just be very, respectful and sensitive, but that probably is a question that people might be wondering. And what does that look like?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I tell people, I still deal with the impact of PANDAS on my life. I still have certain minor tics. I still have some compulsive thoughts, which we probably all do to some extent. And so I still deal with the impact of that on my life. However, it's minute compared to what it used to be. Like, I don't have the rage or the anger anymore at all. Everything's very controllable. And so while I'm not 100% cured, I like to say I'm 95% cured and I have an amazing quality of life. I've learned to cope and live with it in a way that doesn't bother anybody, and where, where sitting in church or a lecture hall previously would have been nearly impossible for me. Now I do it. I have no problem. Like going to this fancy dinner in a couple of weeks, I'm not nervous about that at all. Like it's going to be a good time. I can look forward to it. I've got a family now. I'm running a business, which is amazing, and so there's ways to manage your symptoms, even if they're not completely gone, in a way that makes your life very functional and fulfilling. And so there are many people who have been completely cured as well, as a result of using these tools we're talking about over time. And one of them that's very helpful is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. You can actually retrain your brain to respond differently to these external stimuli. Whether it's like for me, it was coughing and sniffing and these audible noises in the background of these lecture halls and large gatherings that absolutely drove me crazy. I don't know what it is, but when I hear these noises, my brain signals my body to start doing these tics, and it's like a relief of that anxiety that's created from the triggers, as we call them.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I use cognitive behavioral therapy to retrain my body's response to these triggers, using deep breathing exercises and just forcing myself to ignore it and push it out. And over time, what seems like it would be impossible becomes very possible. And so I've actually mitigated many of these tics and compulsions and symptoms over time by using cognitive behavioral therapy. And
I love that. Yeah.
What's really interesting is that there's actually clinical data that shows CBD can be used in conjunction with CBT. They're symbiotic. Like I compare it to, I did immunotherapy in the form of allergy shots as a teenager. I had bad allergies, probably as a result of inflammation as well. And what they tell you when you go in to get your allergy shots is to take an antihistamine. They always ask you when you go into the office, have you taken your antihistamine? And the reason they ask you to do that, antihistamine is an allergy medication. The allergy medicine reduces the risk of major side effects, anaphylaxis, a negative reaction to the injection. So in a sense, like you go in there, the antihistamine doesn't interfere with the results of your immunotherapy. You're still building tolerance up against those allergens. You're still improving your symptoms and teaching your body to be more immune to these allergens. But the antihistamine makes it a little bit easier so you don't end up in the hospital or have major swelling or any of these other issues. And the reason I bring that up is because CBD acts the same way with cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive training. I take CBD before my CBT sessions, and it takes the edge off. It helps me feel less anxious. It makes everything easier and smoother. So, I mean, CBT is very difficult. You're retraining your brain. You're telling yourself to do something that's uncomfortable intentionally, and it's very difficult. But taking CBD can actually make things a little bit easier and take the edge off. And that's been studied in clinical trials, but that's something I experienced just anecdotally, just by using it and noticing the effects. So it's really cool to have that validation through clinical trials. But CBD is not the only anti-inflammatory that I use. I take quercetin and vitamin D, a powerful flavonoid that has anti-inflammatory properties. I take curcumin, like turmeric as well. So, and then in combination with an anti-inflammatory diet, all of those compounds have done a very fantastic job of reducing my inflammation and helping me to feel better.
I love that. And I'm really, really glad that we made this connection and got to have this conversation, Ethan, because I really, once again, learned so much from you. Thank you so much for bringing all of this to my audience and to me. And I feel really grateful to be able to share now this knowledge and share that with people. um, two things before, we leave. I want you to tell everyone where we can find you to hook up with you, or to have you on their podcast, or just ask questions if they might have any. And then don't let me not get that information for that dinner and everything, because I'd love to share it with my network and share it with people that might have that same interest. I know a family that is in Maryland that their daughter, I think she's like 21, is really has just barely had a PANDAS diagnosis as well. And I want to share this information with her family for sure. So I'd love to do that.
Yeah, please do. That's wonderful. The 5K is such an awesome event. I mean, it's just a wonderful place to connect with people who have walked this journey and are walking this journey. I mean, there's people of all stages of life and of their healing journey at this event, and just a wealth of knowledge and experience, and people who just want to connect and reach out to you and do this walk life together, right? So I think it's great. I've built an awesome community through this organization and others, so I'll definitely send you that. You can find my information. My website is greenvalleynutrition.com. My story's on there. You can learn more about my business and what I do on there. I also have Instagram. It's Ethan_Pandas, and I post all kinds of fun lifestyle content on there. Farm life, motorcycles, kids, all the stuff that I do. I will say I used to be very ashamed to talk about this. I was unwilling to talk about this. I didn't want people to know what I was dealing with. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, good.
I would encourage people, just like you're saying, be open and honest about what you're dealing with, regardless of if it's PANDAS or autism or anything that you're dealing with in life. Bottling it up and trying to fight it yourself is a losing battle. The day that I decided to be open about what I'm dealing with, it's like I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Like I didn't have to bear this alone. I thought that I was honestly like a freak. Like I thought I was the only person dealing with this. I thought I was all alone and that people were judging me, and they would ask, "Hey man, are you okay?" And I just got so upset. Learning to just be okay with that and say, "Yeah, I'm okay. I have these tics, yada yada." I mean, it's like the questions are qualmed immediately. Like instead of worrying if I have a seizure or if I'm going to, keel over, they're like, "Oh, he's got these tics, all right, whatever." And for a long time, I didn't want to be the kid who like had tics or was twitching, but like it's okay. And just admitting that and accepting it, that's your pathway to healing. Like being okay with yourself and talking about it. Now you've given yourself an opportunity to connect with others who can relate to you, and also potentially help them along their healing journey too. So now if you go to my website, you'll see at the top my logo is a panda. And so I've just embodied that as who I am, and it's just been so nice. So that's what I encourage everyone to do.
I love that so much. Is there like a national or international website or a site that people can go to get information on PANDAS?
Yeah, there's a few. So the Neuroimmune Foundation website is a great resource. I work with their organization as well. There's also Aspire, ASPIRE, Aspire Network. It's run by a woman who's a good friend of mine as well, and she has her website is amazing. It's got all the information you would want to know about PANDAS and how to get diagnosed and what a treatment protocol looks like. And if your doctor is unfamiliar with this, first of all, I would point them to these resources as well. And then I would seek out somebody who is knowledgeable and experienced in treating this in order to get a diagnosis quickly and get on your path to healing. Because the longer you let this go unaddressed, the harder it is to climb out of that hole. So getting that diagnosis and treatment protocol soon is very important.
Oh, Ethan, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you. And I hope that we can follow each other on socials and stay in touch in the future. I'd love to hear more about, the events that you're going to. And I love that you're building and adding to this community, because if there's anything I know more, building community is so important There's no need to feel isolated. There's no need to feel alone. There's at least one other person in those, 8 billion people, 9 billion people in the world that can relate and help you not feel like you're going through something by yourself. So please reach out. Please reach out to me anytime if you have any questions or want to be a guest on the podcast or want to reach out to any of my guests. And as always, it's just such a wonderful time to get to know you and make this connection with you. And now just so much to look forward to in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have you back on to do a homeschooling episode and talk about our fun things that we put together for our kids. So thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch.
In the heart of the city, she's shining bright. Oh yeah, stories of love and courage all throughout the night. Her voice resonating, an anthem for all through the trials and the trials. She answers the call, a mother and a fighter, breaking barriers in stride. With love as her guide, she'll never hide. She's changing the world for you, with a heart that's fierce strong, empathy's a melody. In our journey we all belong. Followers gather like stars in the night, so bright. 44,000 voices sharing in the light. She stands for family, advocates for more, a movement of compassion, ways will soar. Podcast together, a symphony of support, creating life, changing rapport. She's changing the world for you, with a heart that's fierce and strong. Empathy's a melody, in a journey